The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Andre's small office in the back of his company's warehouse. He rubbed his tired eyes, having stayed up late again working on the newest version of their solar battery design. The desk was cluttered with sketches, circuit diagrams, and 3 empty coffee cups, evidence of another all-night work session. Andre Washington had never imagined he'd be here. Growing up on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood where dreams often died young, he had beaten impossible odds. Now at 34, he ran Green Power Solutions, a company bringing affordable renewable energy to communities that big corporations had written off as unprofitable. His phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Tanya. "Boss, you need to check your email right now." "Like right now," Andre sighed. "Another problem with the supply chain?" "No," Tanya said, her voice rising with excitement. "American Business Today wants you on their show." The email came in 20 minutes ago. Andre nearly dropped his phone. American Business Today wasn't just any show. It was the most watched business program in the country. CEOs, billionaire investors, and financial wizards all made appearances. And now they wanted him? "Are you sure they have the right person?" he asked. 100% sure. "They specifically mentioned your work bringing solar power to the South Side and your new battery technology." "This is huge." After hanging up, Andre opened his laptop and found the email. It was from a producer named Diane Wells, explaining that the show wanted to feature entrepreneurs making real changes in overlooked communities. She wrote that his story of growing up in public housing and eventually creating technology that was bringing power back to those same neighborhoods had caught their attention. Andre leaned back in his chair, heart racing. This kind of exposure could change everything. Green Power had been running on slim margins and investor goodwill for 5 years. They'd installed solar systems in over 30 neighborhoods across 3 states, but they needed more capital to scale up. He called his grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died when he was 9. "Grandma, guess what? American Business Today wants me on their show." "The one with that man who's always yelling?" she asked. Andre laughed. "That's the one. James Parker." His grandmother went quiet for a moment. "That man can be mean, Andre. I've seen how he talks to people he doesn't respect." "I know, Grandma. But this is a huge opportunity for the company. We could reach investors who would never take my calls otherwise." "Just be careful," she said. "People like him, they're looking for a show, not the truth." After promising to be careful, Andre hung up and did what he always did when facing a big decision. He made a list of pros and cons. The exposure could bring investors and new customers. But his grandmother's warning stuck with him. He'd seen Parker's interviews before, how the host could be charming one minute and vicious the next, especially with guests he seemed to look down on. Andre spent the next hour watching clips of Parker's interviews. In one, Parker smiled warmly while talking to the CEO of a major tech company, laughing at his jokes and treating him like an old friend. In another, he grilled a female founder about her company's finances with such hostility that she nearly walked off the set. The pattern was clear. Parker was respectful to people who looked like him and came from similar backgrounds. Everyone else had to prove they belonged. Andre's finger hovered over the keyboard, tempted to decline. Then his eyes landed on the photo of his team. 23 people who depended on Green Power for their livelihoods. People from the neighborhood who had never been given chances elsewhere. He thought about the waiting list of communities wanting their systems. This wasn't just about him, he wrote back, accepting the invitation. The next morning, Andre gathered his team in their small conference room, really just a corner of the warehouse with a table and some chairs. "So I've got some news," he said. "American Business Today wants to feature us." The room erupted in cheers and high fives. "Hold on," Andre said, raising his hands. "This is a big opportunity, but also a big risk. James Parker isn't exactly known for being kind to people like me." "You mean brilliant engineers?" joked Dwayne, his head of production. "You know what I mean," Andre said. "Black entrepreneurs don't always get fair treatment on his show." The room grew quiet. They all knew the reality, so why do it? Asked Lisa, their marketing person. "We're doing fine without mainstream approval." "Are we, though?" Andre pointed to the whiteboard where their financial projections were written. "We've got 6 months of runway left. The big utility companies are fighting our permits in every new city. We need more visibility and more investors who can help us fight these battles." He looked around the room at the faces of people who had taken chances on his vision. I grew up watching my grandmother clean other people's houses so I could have school supplies. I promised myself that if I ever built something meaningful, I wouldn't let fear stop me from making it as big as possible. If I don't go on this show because I'm afraid of some TV host, what message does that send? Tanya, who had been with him since day one, spoke up. We're with you, boss. But you need to prepare for Parker. He's going to try to make you look bad. How do you prepare for someone who doesn't play fair? Andre asked. By knowing your stuff better than anyone else, said Dwayne. Let's run through every possible question, especially the unfair ones. For the next week, the team held mock interviews. They threw the hardest questions they could think of at Andre. How did someone from his background learn engineering? Why should investors trust him with millions when he had no family wealth to fall back on? Wasn't his business model just a fancy form of charity? Each question stung, but Andre knew they were right to ask them. Parker would go even harder. 2 days before the interview, a package arrived from the show. Inside was information about the segment, which would be titled New Faces of Energy Innovation. There was also a list of likely questions, all straightforward and respectful. This doesn't seem right, Andre said to Tanya as they reviewed the materials. These questions are way too soft. Maybe Parker's turning over a new leaf? Tanya suggested, though her tone made it clear she didn't believe it. Andre shook his head. More likely they don't want us to prepare for the real questions. The night before the interview, Andre couldn't sleep. He paced his apartment, rehearsing facts and figures about green power. Their installations had reduced energy cost by an average of 62% in low-income households. They'd created jobs in neighborhoods with unemployment rates 3 times the national average. Their new battery design used recycled materials and cost 40% less than competitors. But would any of that matter if Parker had already decided who Andre was before he even opened his mouth? Around midnight, Andre called his grandmother. Can't sleep? She asked, somehow knowing even though he hadn't called this late in years. I'm nervous, Grandma. What if I mess up? This isn't just about me. Listen to me, she said, her voice firm despite her 87 years. You were always a special child. Even when we had nothing, you found ways to build things, to fix things. Remember when you fixed Mrs. Johnson's refrigerator when you were just 11? Andre smiled at the memory. I just rewired the motor. Just, he says, his grandmother laughed. Other kids were playing ball and you were teaching yourself electrical engineering from library books. Her voice grew serious. Tomorrow that man might try to make you feel small. He might try to make you forget all you've accomplished. Don't let him. But what if he asks something I can't answer? Then you tell the truth. Say you don't know. Strong men aren't afraid of the truth. She paused. But also remember, that man doesn't know what you know. He hasn't lived what you've lived. You bring something special to that table. After they hung up, Andre felt calmer. He went to his closet and picked out his outfit for tomorrow. Not his only suit, which was a little too flashy, but a simple blue button-up shirt and khaki pants. He wanted viewers to see him as he was, a hardworking guy who built something real, not someone trying to impress the wealthy with designer labels. As he finally drifted off to sleep, his grandmother's words echoed in his mind. Be yourself. Speak your truth. The American Business Today studio was bigger than Andre had imagined. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, and cameras were positioned throughout the space. Staff members with headsets rushed around, speaking in the shorthand of people who worked together daily. In the green room, a makeup artist applied powder to Andre's face. To prevent shine under the lights, she explained. His hands were sweaty and his mouth felt dry despite the 3 bottles of water he'd already emptied. A production assistant with a clipboard appeared at the door. Mr. Washington? You're on in 5 minutes. As Andre followed her through the maze of corridors, he spotted James Parker at his desk on the set, reviewing note cards. Even from a distance, Parker looked impressive in his tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. He exuded the confidence of someone who had never been told he didn't belong. The production assistant led Andre to a mark on the floor just off camera. Wait here until Mr. Parker introduces you, then walk out, shake his hand and take a seat. Try not to look directly into the cameras. Andre nodded, his heart pounding so hard he was sure the microphones would pick it up. From his position, he could hear Parker's introduction. Today we're talking to a newcomer in the energy sector, who claims to have solutions for underserved communities. Let's see if his ideas hold up to scrutiny. Not innovative entrepreneur or engineering. Graduate, but newcomer with ideas that needed scrutiny. The framing was already clear. Please welcome Andre, Washington of Green Power Solutions. Taking a deep breath, Andre stepped onto the set, ready to face whatever came next. As he walked toward Parker, he reminded himself of everything that had brought him to this moment. The long nights studying, the rejections from dozens of investors, the first successful installation that had cut a single mother's energy bill in half. He had earned his place here. Parker stood, extending his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Welcome to American business today, Mr. Washington. Andre shook his hand firmly, looking directly into Parker's eyes. Thank you for having me. As he took his seat, Andre knew the real challenge was just beginning. Parker's reputation for ambushing guests was well known, especially those who didn't fit his idea of what a successful business person looked like. But Andre hadn't come this far to be caught unprepared. Whatever Parker threw at him, he would face it with the same determination that had built Green Power from nothing. The red light on the camera blinked on. It was showtime. Andre left the studio after his brief introduction to Parker, with the full interview scheduled for 3 days later. The production team explained they wanted to give him time to prepare, but Andre suspected they were also building anticipation among their viewers. They had filmed a short promo that would air the next day. Back at the Green Power warehouse, his team gathered around him like cornermen around a boxer. So how was he in person? Tanya asked, handing Andre a cup of coffee. Andre took a sip before answering. Exactly what you'd expect. All smiles for the camera, cold eyes when they stopped rolling. Dwayne leaned against a desk, arms crossed. Did you get any hints about what he'll ask? Nothing specific, but his introduction was telling. Called me a newcomer with ideas that need scrutiny, not exactly setting me up as an expert. The room went quiet. They all knew what that meant. Okay, said Lisa, clapping her hands together. Then we prepare for everything. Andre, for the next 3 days you eat, sleep, and breathe Green Power data. Every number, every success story, every challenge we've overcome. If Parker wants to test you, let's make sure you pass with flying colors. Andre nodded. I need to be ready for anything. And we'll need to prepare your look, added Tanya. First impressions matter, especially on TV. For the rest of the day, they turned the conference room into a war room. The walls soon covered with charts showing their growth, impact metrics, and financial projections. Andre spent hours reviewing everything, drilling himself on the details until they became second nature. That evening he watched the promo for his upcoming appearance. The network had edited it to maximize drama, showing a split-second clip of Parker looking skeptical, while the narrator asked, "Can this newcomer from Chicago's South Side prove he belongs in the big leagues of energy innovation?" It felt more like a promo for a boxing match than a business interview. The next morning, Tanya arrived with a stylist friend who worked with local professionals for important events. TV cameras pick up everything, the stylist explained, as he looked through the options in Andre's closet. That suit is nice, but the pattern might create a moire effect on camera. After much deliberation, they settled on a charcoal gray suit with a subtle texture, a crisp white shirt, and a blue tie that the stylist said would bring out your confidence on screen. No jewelry except your watch, the stylist advised. Keep it simple and professional. You want them focusing on your words, not your accessories. While Andre tried on different looks, Dwayne set up a mock interview space in the conference room, arranging the chairs to mimic the studio layout. Lisa would play Parker, and she promised not to go easy on him. Why should anyone believe you can deliver what major energy companies with billions in resources haven't? Lisa fired off in their first practice session, her tone deliberately condescending. Andre started to answer with technical details about their battery design, but stopped himself. Too complex, he muttered. Need to make it simpler. Good catch, Lisa said. Remember, you're not just talking to Parker. You're talking to viewers who might know nothing about energy technology. They ran through dozens of potential questions, some about his background. How did someone from your neighborhood get into engineering? Some about the business model. Isn't this just charity dressed up as business? And some were frankly offensive. Didn't you get special funding just because of diversity initiatives? With each question, Andre worked to find the balance between being factual and relatable, between showing his expertise and not coming across as arrogant. It was exhausting work, By the evening, his throat was dry from talking and his mind was swimming with facts and figures. "Let's call it a day," Tanya suggested, seeing his fatigue. "You need to rest that brain of yours," but Andre couldn't rest. He stayed up late watching more of Parker's interviews, looking for patterns in how he tried to trip up guests. He noticed that Parker often used a technique of starting with softball questions to build rapport, then suddenly switching to aggressive questioning once the guest was comfortable. "He won't catch me off guard," Andre promised himself. The next day brought more preparation, this time focused on body language. Lisa brought in another friend who had worked in television. "TV is a visual medium," the friend explained. "Viewers will make judgments about you in seconds, before you even open your mouth." They worked on how Andre should sit, straight but not stiff, where to look at Parker, not the cameras, and what to do with his hands. Keep them visible, use natural gestures but avoid excessive movement. And no matter what he says, the friend emphasized, keep your facial expressions neutral. If you look angry or defensive even for a second, that's the clip they'll use in promos and social media. Andre practiced his expressions in a mirror, learning to keep his face composed even when Lisa threw the most provocative questions at him. "You need to understand," she said, channeling Parker at his most condescending, "that real businesses need to make profits, not just feel good about helping poor neighborhoods." Andre felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression calm. "Actually," he replied evenly, "our profit margins in those neighborhoods are higher than industry standard. Turns out treating overlooked communities with respect creates loyal customers and lower acquisition costs." "Good." Lisa nodded approvingly. "Fact-based but not defensive. Keep that energy." They also prepared for the possibility that Parker might try to interrupt him or talk over him. "If he cuts you off," Dwayne advised, "wait for him to finish, then say something like, 'If I could just add to that point.' Never try to talk over him, it will make you look aggressive on camera, even if he started it." The day before the interview, Andre received a call from a friend who worked at another media company. "I heard you're going on Parker's show," his friend said. "I should warn you, I've got contacts there. Word is Parker has been doing extra research on you. He's planning to come at you hard." Andre's stomach tightened. "Any idea what angle?" "Something about your early funding and some comments you made at a conference last year about energy inequality. He's twisting it to make it sound like you're all politics, no business." After thanking his friend, Andre called an emergency meeting with his team. "We need to prepare for the worst," he told them, sharing what he'd learned. "That conference, wasn't that where you talked about how utility companies redline certain neighborhoods?" Tanya asked. Andre nodded. "I showed maps of how infrastructure investment correlates with neighborhood demographics. It wasn't political, just data. But Parker will frame it as politics," Lisa said. "He'll try to paint you as an activist pretending to be a businessman." They spent the rest of the day preparing responses to this new line of attack. Andre pulled up the presentation he'd given, refreshing himself on the exact data, and carefully considering how to explain complex issues of energy access and infrastructure disparity in soundbite-friendly ways. That night, the eve of the interview, Andre couldn't sleep again. He paced his apartment, running through answers in his head, second-guessing his preparation. Around midnight, his phone rang. It was his grandmother. "I had a feeling you'd be up," she said. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Andre admitted. "Grandma, what if I mess this up?" "We've prepared for everything we can think of, but Parker has a way of finding people's weak spots." "What's your weak spot?" she asked simply. Andre thought for a moment. "I get defensive when people suggest I haven't earned my place. When they imply I got handouts or special treatment." She hummed knowingly. "That's because you worked twice as hard to get half as far, and people still want to take away your credit." "Exactly. Let me tell you something, child. When I was working in those big houses on the north side, cleaning for people who wouldn't even look me in the eye, I knew my worth. They might not have seen it, but I did." Her voice grew stronger. "Tomorrow that man is going to try to make you forget your worth. Don't you let him." "But what if he provokes me and I react? The wrong clip goes viral and everything we've built could be at risk." "Then you remember who you are," she said firmly. "You're not just my grandson. You're the boy who fixed Mrs. Johnson's refrigerator and wouldn't take her money. You're the teenager who taught computer classes at the community center for free. You're the man who came back to our neighborhood when you could have gone anywhere." Her words calmed him as they always had. "Thanks, Grandma." Just be yourself, Andre. Your real self, not who they expect you to be. That's always been more than enough. After they hung up, Andre finally felt ready to sleep. His grandmother was right. He had prepared all he could. Now he needed to trust himself. The morning of the interview, Andre woke early. He put on his carefully selected outfit, ate a light breakfast, and reviewed his key talking points one last time. As he was about to leave, he looked at a small framed photo on his dresser, himself as a skinny 10-year-old, standing beside his grandmother in front of their old apartment building. "For us," he whispered, tucking a small copy of the photo into his jacket pocket. When he arrived at the studio, it was a whirlwind of activity. A production assistant ushered him to makeup, where they applied powder to prevent shine under the harsh lights. Another mic'd him up, running a small wire under his jacket. "Mr. Parker wants to have a word before you go on," a producer informed him, leading Andre to a small room off the main studio. Parker was there, reviewing note cards. He looked up as Andre entered, his television smile nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Washington," he said, not standing or offering his hand. "Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page about today. My viewers expect real talk, not PR spin. I'm going to ask tough questions." Andre met his gaze steadily. "I welcome tough questions, Mr. Parker. That's how good ideas get better." Something flickered in Parker's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at not finding the intimidation he expected. "5 minutes," called a production assistant from the doorway. As Andre walked toward the set, he touched the photo in his pocket. No matter what happened next, he knew who he was and why he was here. He hadn't come this far to be rattled by one hostile interviewer, no matter how powerful. Taking his place in the guest chair, Andre took a deep breath and centered himself. The floor director counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The red light on the camera blinked on, and Parker turned to face him, his television smile back in full force. "Welcome back to American Business Today. We're here with Andre Washington, founder of Green Power Solutions, a company claiming to revolutionize energy access in underserved communities." Parker's emphasis on claiming was subtle but clear. "Mr. Washington, thank you for joining us." The battle had begun. The studio lights felt hotter than Andre had expected. He could feel a small bead of sweat forming at his temple, but he resisted the urge to wipe it away. The cameras were rolling now, and every movement would be captured. "So, Andre," Parker began, his voice carrying the smooth confidence of a man who controlled the conversation, "tell our viewers a bit about your background. You grew up on Chicago's South Side, correct?" Andre nodded, maintaining eye contact with Parker rather than looking at the cameras, just as he'd practiced. "That's right. I was raised by my grandmother in Englewood. She worked as a housekeeper to support us after my parents passed away." "And how does someone from Englewood end up in the energy business? It's not exactly a common path." Andre smiled, recognizing the subtle condescension in Parker's tone. "Actually, it made perfect sense to me. In neighborhoods like mine, people spend a disproportionate percentage of their income on energy bills. I saw families choosing between keeping the lights on or putting food on the table. That's a problem worth solving." Parker nodded, looking impressed, though Andre noticed it didn't reach his eyes. "Noble intentions. But good intentions don't build successful companies. Let's talk about your actual business. You install solar panels in low-income areas?" "That's part of it," Andre explained. "We've developed a unique solar and battery storage system that's more affordable and efficient than traditional setups. We install these systems in communities that have been overlooked by the major energy companies, and residents see their bills cut by an average of 62%. "Impressive if true," Parker said, emphasizing the "if" slightly. "But solar isn't new technology. What makes your approach different from the dozens of other solar companies out there?" This was familiar territory. Andre leaned forward slightly, his passion for the work coming through naturally. "3 key differences. First, our battery technology uses recycled materials that cut costs by 40% while maintaining efficiency. Second, we've developed a financing model that works for people who might not have perfect credit scores, but have been reliable bill payers for years. And third, we hire and train people from the communities we serve, creating jobs where they're desperately needed." Parker nodded again, jotting something on the notepad in front of him. The first few minutes were going exactly as Andre had expected. Softball questions to establish the basics for viewers. "Let's talk numbers," Parker continued. "Your company has raised how much in funding so far?" We've raised $12 million in venture capital over 3 rounds, plus another $8 million in project financing for specific installations. $20 million total. And your revenue last year? $7.5 million with projections of $15 million this year. Parker raised his eyebrows, looking genuinely surprised. That's significant growth. What do you attribute that to? Andre relaxed slightly. The conversation was flowing naturally toward Green Power's success story. Word of mouth has been powerful for us. When one family sees their energy bills cut in half, their neighbors want the same. And our community hiring approach means people trust us in a way they don't trust outsiders coming in with promises. Trust is certainly important, Parker agreed, taking a sip from his mug. Speaking of trust, I'd like to understand more about how you started the company. You were working as an electrical engineer before, correct? Yes, I worked for Midwest Utilities for 3 years after college. And then you suddenly had the expertise and connections to start an energy company? Parker's tone shifted slightly. The first hint of the attack Andre had been warned about. It wasn't sudden, Andre replied calmly. I'd been developing the battery technology in my spare time for years, ever since college. I entered clean energy competitions, networked at industry events, and built relationships with potential investors long before I left my job. Parker smiled thinly. But surely you'd agree that starting a company requires more than just technical knowledge. It requires business acumen, connections, capital, advantages that, frankly, many people from your background don't have access to. And there it was. The first real jab, wrapped in concern. Andre felt a flash of annoyance but kept his expression neutral. Success in business requires overcoming obstacles, regardless of where you start. I won't pretend the path was easy, but determination goes a long way. Determination, yes, Parker nodded, but also assistance. Your company received early funding from the Urban Entrepreneurs Initiative, didn't it? A program specifically designed for minority business owners. The studio seemed to go quiet. Andre could feel the cameraman zoom in slightly, capturing his reaction. This was the moment his team had warned him about. Parker was suggesting his success came from special treatment rather than merit. We received a $50,000 grant from UEI, yes. That represented less than 5% of our initial funding round. The rest came from traditional investors who saw the potential in our technology and business model. Andre kept his voice steady, not defensive but matter of fact. Parker pressed on. But that initial grant opened doors, didn't it? It gave you credibility with those other investors? Every entrepreneur needs that first vote of confidence, Andre acknowledged. For some it comes from family wealth or connections. For others like me, it comes from organizations that recognize talent in unexpected places. But no investor puts in serious money without believing in the business fundamentals. Speaking of fundamentals, Parker said, abruptly changing direction, I've been looking at some of your public statements. At the National Energy Conference last year, you made some rather pointed comments about traditional utility companies. You accused them of systematic discrimination in how they invest in infrastructure. That sounds more like activism than business. Andre felt his pulse quicken. This was exactly what his friend had warned him about. Parker had dug up his conference presentation and was trying to paint him as an activist rather than a serious businessman. He took a deep breath, remembering his grandmother's advice to stay true to himself. I presented data showing that infrastructure investment correlates strongly with neighborhood demographics, Andre said carefully. That's not activism, that's market analysis. It helped us identify underserved communities where our business model could thrive. But using terms like energy inequality and utility redlining, that's politically charged language, Parker insisted, his tone growing more aggressive. I use those terms because they accurately describe the market conditions we operate in, Andre replied. Just as a financial analyst might discuss market inefficiencies or arbitrage opportunities. The difference is, our business addresses these inefficiencies while making a profit. Parker leaned forward, his friendly demeanor completely gone now. Let's be frank, Mr. Washington. Many of our viewers are wondering whether companies like yours are truly succeeding on merit, or whether you're benefiting from the current political climate that favors diversity initiatives and environmental programs. The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members behind the cameras seemed to freeze, sensing the tension. This was the moment Parker had been building toward, the sound bite he wanted, the clip that would go viral. Andre felt a surge of anger rising in his chest. The suggestion that he hadn't earned his success, that he was somehow gaming the system rather than creating real value, it was the same doubt he'd faced his entire career. His hand instinctively moved to his jacket pocket where he could feel the small photo of himself and his grandmother. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, Andre composed himself. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but carried an unmistakable weight. "Mr. Parker, Green Power Solutions has installed systems in over 30 neighborhoods across 3 states. We've created 112 jobs, 70% of them in communities with unemployment rates above 15%. Our customers save an average of $700 per year on energy costs. Our investor returns are beating industry averages by 12%. Those aren't political statistics, they're business results." He paused, making sure to maintain eye contact with Parker. As for merit, every entrepreneur faces different challenges. Some are born connected to networks of wealth and influence. Others, like me, have to build those connections from scratch. But at the end of the day, businesses succeed or fail based on whether they create value, not on who founded them or where they came from. Parker seemed momentarily taken aback by Andre's composed response. He'd clearly expected either defensiveness or anger, something he could use to make Andre look unprofessional. Instead, he got a measured, fact-based reply that was hard to argue with. Recovering quickly, Parker tried another angle. "Your company received tax incentives for hiring in certain zip codes, correct? Some might see that as an unfair advantage over competitors who don't qualify for those incentives." Andre nodded, ready for this line of attack. "Every business in America seeks available tax incentives. Oil companies receive billions in subsidies. Tech companies move headquarters to states with favorable tax treatment. We'd be foolish not to utilize programs that align with our business model. That's just good business sense." Parker's expression tightened slightly. This wasn't going as planned. He glanced down at his notes, looking for another angle of attack. "Let's talk about your technology claims," he said, his tone growing more aggressive. "You say your batteries are 40% cheaper, but industry experts I've spoken with question whether that's sustainable or whether you're cutting corners on safety to achieve those price points." "Which experts, specifically?" Andre asked calmly. Parker hesitated. "I'm not at liberty to name them." "I understand," Andre nodded. "What I can tell you is that our technology has been independently verified by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Their report is public and confirms both our cost savings and our safety standards. We've never had a single safety incident across all our installations." Andre could see frustration building in Parker's eyes. Each attempted gotcha moment was being met with facts and calm reasoning, rather than the emotional response he was fishing for. The floor director made a subtle signal to Parker. They were approaching. "A commercial break. We'll continue this discussion after a short break," Parker said to the camera, his professional smile returning. "We're speaking with Andre Washington of Green Power Solutions about the future of energy in underserved communities." As soon as the red lights on the cameras turned off, Parker stood without a word and walked off the set, leaving Andre alone in his chair. A production assistant rushed over with a bottle of water. "You're doing great," she whispered quickly. He usually has people rattled by now. Andre took a sip of water, trying to stay focused. The ambush he'd prepared for had come, but he'd weathered the first wave. Something told him Parker was just getting started, though. The real test would come after the break. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. "Just be yourself, Andre. Your real self, not who they expect you to be." The floor director's voice cut through his thoughts. "Back in 30 seconds. Andre straightened his tie and prepared for round 2. The bright studio lights came back on and the floor director counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1, welcome back to American Business Today, Parker said smoothly, his camera persona once again in place. "We're speaking with Andre Washington, founder of Green Power Solutions." His smile tightened slightly as he turned back to Andre. "Before the break, we were discussing the advantages your company has received through various programs designed to support minority-owned businesses." Andre noticed the deliberate framing, not challenges you've overcome, but advantages you've received. He also noticed that the camera operators had subtly repositioned during the break. One camera was now zoomed in closer on his face, ready to catch any flash of anger or defensiveness. "Actually," Andre replied calmly, "we were discussing how Green Power has created a sustainable business model by identifying underserved markets and developing technology specifically for those markets. Parker waved his hand dismissively. Yes, but let's be honest with our viewers. The current political climate has created special opportunities for businesses like yours, hasn't it? Diversity initiatives, climate funding, environmental justice grants. These have all helped you in ways that wouldn't have been available to everyone. The trap was clear. If Andre disagreed, he would appear ungrateful or dishonest. If he agreed, Parker would use it to suggest he hadn't succeeded on merit. He thought quickly about how to reframe the conversation. You know, Mr. Parker, I think there's an interesting assumption in your question, Andre said thoughtfully. You're suggesting that certain opportunities are special, rather than simply being corrections to long-standing imbalances in access. Andre leaned forward slightly, his voice conversational rather than confrontational. Let me give you an example. For decades, entrepreneurs from certain neighborhoods couldn't get bank loans regardless of their business plan's quality because of redlining practices. When banks finally started lending in those areas, was that a special opportunity or simply the market beginning to work properly? Parker frowned, clearly not expecting this approach. That's ancient history. We're talking about today's business environment. The effects aren't ancient history for communities that lost generations of wealth building, Andre replied. But more importantly, what you're calling special opportunities are actually smart market mechanisms. When there's untapped potential in overlooked communities, it's just good business to create pathways to invest there. Andre could see Parker getting frustrated. This wasn't the defensive reaction he'd been fishing for. Let's get specific then, Parker said, his tone sharpening. Your company received preferential consideration for city contracts in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Detroit because of your status as a minority-owned business. That's an advantage your competitors don't have. Andre nodded, acknowledging the point. Those programs exist because cities have recognized that having diverse suppliers creates more economic resilience and better outcomes. It's similar to how the Defense Department ensures they have multiple suppliers for critical components rather than depending on just one source. He paused. But those programs only get your foot in the door. We still had to deliver the best technology at the best price, or we wouldn't have won those contracts. And yet many would argue, Andre politely interrupted, something he'd been coached not to do except in specific circumstances. This was one of them. If I could add something important here, when green power competes for open contracts with no diversity considerations, we still win 68% of the time. Our success isn't because of special treatment. It's because we've built something genuinely better. For a moment, Parker seemed unsure how to respond. Andre had just cited a specific statistic that undercut the entire premise of Parker's questioning. The host glanced down at his notes, visibly regrouping. Let's shift gears then, Parker said, his tone suggesting he was doing Andre a favor by changing topics. Your background is unusual for a tech CEO. No Ivy League degree, no family connections in the industry. Some might wonder if you have the necessary expertise to lead a company in such a technical field. There it was. The subtle suggestion that Andre didn't belong, that he was somehow less qualified despite his achievements. Andre felt a familiar surge of frustration, but channeled it into focus rather than anger. I studied electrical engineering at Illinois Tech, worked 3 years at Midwest Utilities, and spent thousands of hours developing our core technology, Andre replied evenly. But you're right that my path was different from some tech CEOs. I didn't have the luxury of focusing only on technology. Growing up, I watched my grandmother work 2 jobs to keep our lights on. That gave me insights into energy and security that you can't learn in any classroom. Andre paused, making sure to look directly at the camera for the first time. That perspective is actually our competitive advantage. We understand our customers' needs from lived experience, not just market research. Something shifted in the studio atmosphere. The camera operators exchanged glances. Even Parker seemed to realize that his line of questioning wasn't landing as expected. Instead of appearing defensive or angry, Andre was thoughtfully reframing each challenge into an opportunity to highlight his company's strengths. Parker tried yet another angle. Your customer base is primarily low income. How can that possibly be a sustainable business model? These aren't people with disposable income to spend on fancy green technology. Andre smiled slightly, recognizing the fundamental misunderstanding in Parker's question. That's exactly the misconception that created this market opportunity. Low income doesn't mean no income. These are hard-working people who pay their bills, but energy costs eat up a disproportionate amount of their budget, sometimes up to 30% of household income compared to the national average of 3%. He continued, his passion for the work evident in his voice. Our customers aren't buying green technology because it's trendy. They're investing in lower energy bills, which means more money for food, education, healthcare, and because we understand their financial realities, we've created payment plans that make our systems accessible while still being profitable for us. Parker frowned. But surely the default rates must be higher in these communities. Actually, our default rate is 2.7%, well below the industry average of 4%, Andre countered. When you treat people with respect and deliver real value, they prioritize paying you. The frustration on Parker's face was becoming increasingly visible. Every attempt to undermine Andre's credibility was being met with specific data that contradicted Parker's assumptions. The host was used to guests becoming emotional or flustered, giving him control of the narrative. Andre's calm, fact-based responses were throwing him off balance. Parker shuffled his notes, searching for another angle. Let's talk about scalability then. Your approach might work for a few neighborhoods, but it's hardly a solution to our national energy challenges. I disagree, Andre said. We've proven our model works across different regions, urban and rural. We're currently growing at 120% year over year. With the right investment, there's no reason we couldn't reach 1 million households within 5 years. That's quite a claim, Parker said skeptically. It's backed by our data, Andre replied simply. But more importantly, it addresses a massive market need that traditional utilities have ignored. There are 40 million households in America spending a disproportionate amount on energy. That's not a niche. That's a significant market opportunity. Parker seemed to realize he was losing control of the interview. His questions had failed to rattle Andre or expose weaknesses in his business model. In fact, the more aggressive Parker became, the more Andre's expertise and vision shone through. It was time for a last-ditch effort. Let me be blunt, Mr. Washington, Parker said, his tone hardening. Many of our viewers are skeptical of businesses that seem to leverage identity politics for gain. They wonder whether companies like yours would succeed in a truly merit-based system without special considerations. The studio went completely silent. This was Parker's most direct attack yet. Not just questioning Andre's business, but suggesting his entire success was based on his identity rather than his work. It was the kind of comment designed to provoke an emotional response, to make Andre defensive or angry on national television. Andre felt a momentary impulse to fire back, to point out the loaded assumptions in Parker's statement, to call out the disrespect inherent in questioning whether his success was earned. He took a deep breath, feeling the small photo in his pocket. He thought about his grandmother, about the neighborhoods his company served, about the employees who depended on him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear, forcing everyone to listen carefully. You know, Mr. Parker, I've sat in countless meetings with investors, potential clients, and business partners who looked at me and had the exact same question you just voiced. They never said it as directly as you did, but I could see it in their eyes. Does this guy really belong here? Andre leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful rather than angry. Success in business isn't just about building a great product or identifying a market opportunity. For some of us, it's also about persevering when others assume you don't belong in the room. He paused, letting his words sink in. But here's what I've learned. Excellence speaks for itself. Our technology works. Our business model is profitable. Our customers are satisfied. Our investors are seeing returns. Those aren't opinions or politics. They're measurable facts. Andre gestured slightly with his hand, including the viewing audience in his response. I believe most Americans understand that merit isn't measured by where you came from, but by what you've built. They know that innovation often comes from unexpected places, from people who see problems others have overlooked. He smiled slightly. So to answer the concern you raised, yes, green power would succeed in any truly merit-based system, because we've built something of genuine value. And I'd suggest that questioning the legitimacy of successful businesses based on who founded them says more about the questioner than the business. There was a moment of complete silence in the studio. Even Parker seemed temporarily at a loss for words. The camera operators exchanged glances. knowing they had just captured something remarkable. Not an angry outburst or a defensive response, but a dignified statement that cut to the heart of the assumptions behind Parker's questioning. Parker cleared his throat, visibly recalibrating. For the first time in the interview, he looked slightly uncomfortable. Well, we're nearly out of time. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with our viewers? Andre nodded, seizing the opportunity to end on his terms. I'd just like to say that the energy challenges facing our country require new thinking and new approaches. At Green Power, we believe the solutions will come from listening to communities that have been overlooked and bringing their perspectives to the table. That's not just good for those communities, it's good for innovation, good for the environment, and ultimately, good for business. The floor director signaled that they had 30 seconds left. Parker turned to the camera. We've been speaking with Andre Washington, founder and CEO of Green Power Solutions. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for having me, Andre replied with a genuine smile, knowing that in the face of an ambush, he had not only held his ground but had transformed the conversation into something meaningful. As the cameras cut away, Parker quickly removed his microphone and walked off the set without another word to Andre. But Andre noticed something in the faces of the crew, small nods of respect, a thumbs up from the floor director, a whispered well done from the production assistant who helped him remove his mic. He had come to the lion's den and emerged not just unscathed, but victorious. Andre stepped out of the studio into the bright morning sunlight, loosening his tie slightly as the door closed behind him. For a moment, he just stood there, letting the tension of the past hour drain from his shoulders. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the first of what would soon become an avalanche of notifications. It was a text from Tanya. Boss, you were amazing. The whole team is going crazy here. Call me ASAP. Before he could reply, his phone rang. It was his grandmother. Andre, you there? Her voice sounded concerned. I'm here, Grandma. Just left the studio. How did it go? That man didn't give you too much trouble, did he? Andre smiled, leaning against the building's wall. He tried, but I remembered what you told me, to be myself. I knew you would do well, she said, the pride evident in her voice. I just knew it. When can I see it? They're going to put it on the television soon. It just finished airing live, but I'm sure they'll post clips online. I'll come by later and show you. After promising to bring dinner, Andre hung up and called Tanya back. He had to hold the phone away from his ear as cheers erupted from the speakerphone at the office. They're all watching here, Tanya explained over the noise. Andre, you have no idea what just happened, do you? I know I didn't let him rattle me, Andre replied, flagging down a taxi. Beyond that, I was too focused to think about how it looked. How it looked? It looked like a masterclass in handling a hostile interview. Parker tried every trick in his playbook, and you just... She searched for the right words. You just stayed so calm and kept bringing it back to the facts. Twitter is already blowing up about it. As if on cue, Andre's phone chimed with more notifications. People were tagging him in posts about the interview, sharing clips that were already circulating. The best part, Tanya continued, was when he tried that last identity politics question. And she trailed off. Was that okay? Andre asked, suddenly uncertain. I worried I might have gone too far. Too far? Andre, that was the moment. That was when you went from defending your business to speaking a truth that millions of people feel every day. It was powerful because it was real. The taxi pulled up to the Green Power warehouse 30 minutes later. As Andre walked through the door, the entire team erupted in applause. Someone had connected a laptop to a large monitor, replaying clips from the interview. Dwayne rushed over, giving Andre a bear hug that lifted him off his feet. Man, you showed America what we're all about, Dwayne said, his voice thick with emotion. My phone's been blowing up. My cousin in Atlanta, my old college roommate in Oakland, everybody saw it. Everybody? Andre asked, feeling slightly overwhelmed. Lisa, their marketing director, waved him over to her desk. Look at these numbers, she said, pointing to her screen. Clips from the interview have already been viewed over 100,000 times, and it's only been an hour. Our website traffic is up 700%. The contact form is overloaded with inquiries. Andre stared at the screen, trying to process what was happening. This is a lot, he managed. And check this out, Tanya said, showing him her phone. Business leaders are weighing in. She scrolled through tweets from prominent entrepreneurs and executives, many of whom Andre recognized. Just watched Andre Washington on American Business Today. Masterclass in Grace Under Pressure. This is what real leadership looks like. Green Power Solutions is showing how to build a business that creates both profit and purpose. Impressive performance by founder Andre Washington on ABT this morning. Been in clean energy for 20 years. What Andre Washington said about overlooked markets is spot on. Traditional players have missed huge opportunities. As the day progressed, the story continued to grow. Business publications posted articles with headlines like Green Power CEO turns hostile interview into powerful moment, and how Andre Washington schooled James Parker on modern business. Several investment firms reached out, expressing interest in their upcoming funding round. Around lunchtime, the mayor of Chicago called, "Mr. Washington, I just wanted to personally congratulate you on representing our city so well this morning. Your story is Chicago's story: resilience, innovation, and giving back to the community." By mid-afternoon, the clips had been viewed millions of times. The most shared moment was Andre's response to Parker's final question, with comments praising his composure and wisdom. Several business schools had already contacted Green Power asking if Andre would be willing to speak to their students. But perhaps most surprisingly, around 4 o'clock, Andre received an email from Diane Wells, the producer of American Business Today. "Mr. Washington, I wanted to reach out personally regarding your appearance this morning. The response has been unprecedented. Mr. Parker would like to invite you back for an extended discussion about energy access and entrepreneurship in America. Please let me know if you would be interested." Andre showed the email to his team, raising his eyebrows. "They want you back?" Dwayne asked incredulously. "After Parker tried to ambush you? What are you going to say?" Lisa asked. Andre thought for a moment. "I think I'll accept," he said finally. "Not for Parker's benefit, but because it's another opportunity to talk about what we're doing. And maybe this time we can have a real conversation about energy inequality instead of playing gotcha games." As evening approached, Andre kept his promise to visit his grandmother. He brought takeout from her favorite restaurant and his laptop to show her the interview. They sat together on her worn couch, the same one he'd done his homework on as a child, and he pressed play. His grandmother watched intently, occasionally nodding or squeezing his hand. When it reached the moment where Parker asked his final question about identity politics, she leaned forward slightly. As Andre's measured response played out, tears formed in her eyes. When it finished, she sat quietly for a moment. "Grandma, what did you think?" Andre asked softly. She turned to him, taking his face in her weathered hands. "I think your parents would be so proud of the man you've become. I know I am." Later that night, as Andre finally headed home to his apartment, his phone rang again. It was a number he didn't recognize, but something told him to answer it. "Is this Andre Washington?" a deep voice asked. "Yes, this is Andre." "Mr. Washington, my name is Thomas Reynolds. I'm the CEO of Horizon Capital." Andre nearly dropped his phone. Horizon Capital was one of the largest investment firms in the clean energy space. "I saw your interview this morning," Reynolds continued. "I was impressed not just by how you handled yourself, but by the business metrics you cited. Our firm has been looking to expand our portfolio in exactly the kind of market you're serving." "I appreciate that, Mr. Reynolds. I'll be direct. We'd like to discuss leading your next funding round." "From what I understand, you're looking to raise $30 million to scale your operations?" "That's correct," Andre replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Well, I think we might be able to help with that. My team has already done some preliminary research on green power, and we like what we see. How's your schedule next week?" After arranging a meeting and hanging up, Andre stood in the middle of his living room, hardly able to believe what had just happened. One interview, an interview that was meant to be an ambush, had potentially changed the trajectory of everything they'd been working for. His phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. "Just saw that Parker issued a statement. Might want to check it out." Andre found the statement online. Parker had posted it to his social media accounts. "This morning, I had Andre Washington of Green Power Solutions on American Business Today. While I believe in asking tough questions of all guests, upon reflection, some of my questioning could have been perceived as questioning Mr. Washington's legitimacy as a business leader based on factors other than his company's performance. That was not my intent. I've invited Mr. Washington back for a more in-depth conversation about the important work his company is doing." In journalism, as in business, when we make mistakes, we should acknowledge them and do better next time. It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Parker, it was remarkable nonetheless. The following week was a whirlwind. The meeting with Horizon Capital went even better than expected. They offered to lead a $40 million funding round, $10 million more than Green Power had been seeking. 3 other major investors joined in, and the round was oversubscribed within days. Andre also accepted Parker's invitation for a follow-up interview. This time, the conversation was substantive and respectful, focusing on the real challenges of bringing clean energy to underserved communities. Parker even visited one of Green Power's installations in Chicago, interviewing residents about how the solar systems had impacted their lives. 6 months later, Andre stood on a stage at the National Clean Energy Conference, delivering the keynote address to an audience of industry leaders, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. As he looked out at the sea of faces, he spotted his grandmother in the front row, beaming with pride. The path to innovation isn't always straight, Andre told the audience. Sometimes it requires us to look in places others have overlooked, to listen to voices others haven't heard. At Green Power, we believe that the solutions to our biggest challenges often come from unexpected places and unexpected people. He paused, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. A year ago, many of you probably hadn't heard of our company. Then one morning, I sat down for what was supposed to be a routine interview that turned into something else entirely. The audience chuckled, many of them familiar with the now famous exchange. What I learned from that experience is that sometimes, when people question whether you belong at the table, the most powerful response isn't anger or defensiveness, it's excellence. It's knowing your worth and speaking your truth. After his speech, as Andre mingled with attendees, a young man approached him, looking nervous but determined. "Mr. Washington, I just wanted to say thank you. I watched your interview when it went viral. I was about to give up on my own business idea. Figured someone like me wouldn't get the support needed to make it work. But seeing how you handled yourself, how you didn't let anyone define your worth, it made me keep going." Andre smiled, recognizing a younger version of himself in the man's eyes. "What's your company do?" As the young entrepreneur excitedly explained his concept for affordable water filtration systems, Andre felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The challenging interview had not only transformed Green Power's future, but had perhaps inspired a whole new generation of entrepreneurs who might otherwise have believed they didn't belong. And that, he realized, might be the most important outcome of all.